All right, so today I'm with Jim Knight. We've just read the article "Why Teacher Autonomy is Central to Coaching Success" for the Edu Reading Academic Reading Group. So I just thought I'd have an opportunity to chat with Jim about the article, but also coaching more generally and work from there. So, Jim, if people aren't familiar with your work, how would you introduce yourself to them?
Well, my colleagues and I have been studying coaching for about 20 years, and our focus has been on instructional coaching, which is an approach to coaching that we would say is grounded in dialogue. It's respecting the professionalism of the teacher and the autonomy of the teacher, but at the same time not silencing ourselves. So we are not trying to persuade them. We don't take sides. We're not trying to talk them into something, but we also don't silence ourselves in the conversation. And usually instructional coaches have expertise. They know a lot about effective instruction, but they don't show up as experts. They show up as partners. And I guess lastly, I'd say a core concept in our work is the idea of just positioning ourselves as partners in the process. We're not up here and they're down here. It's definitely an equal relationship where the teacher makes the decisions about what happens in his classroom or her classroom.
Right. Okay. In our discussion, the way I see coaching is a little bit like teaching, in the sense that it's very hard to talk about it in the general. You need to either be very specific or very broad, and so we'll try and do a bit of both. I imagine you're reasonably well traveled. From the countries or the cities or the states that you visited, where would you say coaching has had the most success, or is the place is most ready for it?
I don't know. I think, in North America, there's quite a bit of, especially United States, there's quite a bit of attention focused on instructional coaching.
Mm-hmm.
In Australia, we have a partnership with Growth Coaching International, and they're offering our courses there. And so there's a growing interest in Australia, New Zealand in instructional coaching. But then other parts of the world might be more inclined to do more what we have called facilitative coaching. Say the UK, we haven't seen a lot of instructional coaching in the United Kingdom, and there's a growing interest, like in parts of Southeast Asia, there's a lot of growing interest in coaching too. So it's I don't know if there's any one place where it's taken off. What I would say is, what's unique about the United States compared to other countries is, we'll see what happens right now because of Corona, but that a lot of coaches are full-time coaches. That's their job, whereas in, say, Australia, it might be more the case that everybody's learning how to do some coaching along with their teaching. So that's probably a difference.
Right. And which would you say is better, or just a horses for courses situation?
Well, I think they're different. I think, it's really, what I believe is, to really learn something, a new approach, you have to get in there and try it out and make adjustments. And it should be driven by your concerns, your issues you want to work on. And if you have a person who's really an expert at that practice, that strategy, who can partner with you and help you figure out the nuances and help you meet your goal, it's really helpful. And so to me, having a person who's kind of like a connoisseur of knowledge, they have real expertise, and or a curator, or they're almost like a sommelier in a fancy restaurant who knows a whole lot, but if they do their job right, they explain it to you in a respectful way. And so to me, to have that person, it's pretty hard to do that on top of all the other coaching you're going to do. But there's advantages to everybody being a coach, but then it's a different kind of coaching. It's not like instructional coaching.
Right. Is there like a career stage or a level of experience or something that you think would make ideally a better coach? Because you're talking about, sommelier, so you've probably got some history on wine and you've probably been in it for a little while. Obviously, you're in the industry of training coaches, but from your experience, is there a level of experience that's required or preferable to sort of get a creative and effective coach?
Well, if it's an instructional coach, we would say there's sort of 7 areas that they really have to be skilled at. One of them is, if I can go through them really quickly, one of them is the nature of your relationship with people, the beliefs that you work from. And so we would want to work from a perspective of partnership. We see the teacher as a professional in control of her practice in the classroom. And we were partners in that process. We're not telling them what to do or interpreting data or any of that. We're working as partners. Second thing is we have a process we follow. For us, that's the impact cycle. Third thing is we have what we call an instructional playbook. So there's teaching practices that we know inside out and that we can share with teachers. The fourth thing is we can gather data, and the data is an objective third point for conversation, but it's a way of identifying goals and measuring progress towards the goals. Then we have communication and coaching skills, but the way you listen, ask questions, you find common ground, you foster trust. And then there needs to be, we would say, leadership skills. The coach is really responsive and respectful of the teacher, but also the coach has got their act together. And so they're reliable and on time and so forth. And then lastly, the coach works in a system that supports them, which means that they have time to do their job, and there's a theoretical alignment about what they do, and there's clarity about the role, and there's professional development for the coach. So we would say all those things, if your coaching is going to flourish, if it's instructional coaching, those things need to be put in place. It's pretty hard to set goals if you don't have data that you can gather, and it's going to be difficult to be effective as a coach if you think you're better than the teacher and you don't treat them as a partner. You don't work from a sort of a belief in equality between the two of you. So that's how we would see it.
Right. I was thinking, one of the questions I've got here is coaching, does coaching require data? Because it seems to me like coaching and data might be two ends of the spectrum, in the sense that coaching is, like, according to data, like you'd think of it as a small impact intervention because it's always one-to-one, or at the very most kind of a very small group. How do you see data fitting into that, or do you agree that it feels opposite to the sort of work that coaches do? Or
well, we would say, first off, by definition, we would say coaching is a one-to-one activity. But somebody else has a different definition. That's not to discount their definition. We would say data is important because it's the way in which you identify your goal, and it's the way in which you measure progress towards a goal. And but by data, we're not talking necessarily about achievement data, though it could be that. It's really whatever grows out of your conversation with the teacher when you set a goal. But usually it's either about achievement or it's about engagement. And engagement is, there's 3 elements to it as we describe it. One of them is behavioral engagement. The students are kind of doing what they're supposed to do. Cognitive engagement means they're not just looking like they're learning, but they're actually getting out of the activity what they're supposed to get out of it. And emotional engagement means they feel like they belong in the class or in the school. They feel safe there. They think the learning is meaningful and important. And they just have this sense that they belong in the school. And so all those things could be, and then you break that down more specifically, but all those things could be data you would gather so you can see if you're on track or off track. Just like a runner would want to know if they're, training for a race, they'd want to know how fast they're running. And if they're trying different things or adjusting what they're doing, they want to know if their speed is picking up. It's kind of the same here. But we wouldn't impose the data. The data would grow out of our conversation with the teacher as the teacher sets a goal. And there's kind of questions we ask that would lead to that.
Yeah, right. Maybe I was misrepresenting data as kind of standardized tests, and in Australia we have the NAPLAN, and we think of PISA as our international tests and stuff. Is there a role for that type of data in coaching then?
Well, I mean, I'm hesitant to comment on what other people do or don't do. If it's working, it's great, but that's not the kind of data we would look at. What I would say is the trouble with that kind of data, standard of the NAPLAN or whatever, is that it's not every week. It's not iterative. You just see if you can hit the goal or not, and often you don't know about it until it's too late. We would say your data has to happen every week. You have to know, because usually the first things you do don't work. So you have to make adjustments, and you can't make adjustments if you don't know how you're doing. So if you wanted to go after, state assessments, you'd have to figure out something that would tell you if you're on track for the state assessment. So some way of measuring it iteratively, so you can see if it's working or not working.
Yeah, right. Just to shift gears a little bit, in the article you talk about, I think it might have been from 2006 to 2012, perhaps. The impression was that teacher autonomy was declining. 2 years on from when you wrote, or 1 year on from when you wrote the article, do you still feel that teacher autonomy is on the decline?
Well, I was referencing another study that was, I think, by IES on the data. So, so I don't know for sure. I'm not doing a study on it. I would say I don't really feel that all leaders grasp how dehumanizing it is to tell people what to do and expect them to do it when they have degrees and years of experience and they're professionals. And I think to expect a deep level of commitment from a professional when you tell them what they're supposed to do and you are really kind of directive with them is kind of naive. You might get compliance. People don't want to get fired, but you're not going to get, people aren't going to roll up their sleeves and rub their hands together with enthusiasm when you're telling them what to do. It doesn't work with adults. It doesn't work with children. So I think, I don't know what the trend is, but we're certainly not where we need to be in recognizing the primacy of autonomy. And, Richard Ryan's right there in Australia now. His work is some of the work I really cite a lot around the importance of autonomy.
In terms of autonomy, I mean, you talk in the piece about, the obvious things like not being, not running afoul of the law and so forth. To what extent do you think autonomy is something that can be given, and to what extent do you think it's something that needs to be taken? Because to me, barring, the most extreme circumstances where, leadership is dictating exactly what you must do at what time and when, do you feel like perhaps there's a role for activism in the concept of autonomy? Like, how much do you have to take in the sense of autonomy, and how much is it something that needs to be given to you from a leader?
Well, I think that the leader can take autonomy away. I mean, I think that we can say you have to do these things and have an expectation you're going to do them. So we can be in an environment where that's, there's just an expectation you're going to do things. A lot of great teachers leave settings because they lose their autonomy. I think, and I would say there are some things, autonomy doesn't mean everything's up for grabs. You can't say, I think I'm going to start teaching at 11 every day. You have to, I'm not really a morning person. I'm going to start teaching in the afternoon. There's things you have to do. And I also think that professional learning should be expected of a professional, that people should be getting better. They should be doing something to show they're getting better, whatever their profession is. We don't want to go see a doctor with our daughter's got a high fever. We don't want to go see a doctor who says, I stopped learning 10 years ago. We want to see a doctor who's continuously improving. So I think there's some things that aren't up for grabs. And even I would say there's going to be things that have to happen consistently across a system where they have to happen. But the more people have autonomy and choice, the more they're going to be committed to what they do. And the more you take away autonomy and choice, the more it's going to diminish their motivation.
Right. And as, I guess, a small extension of that, how much autonomy would you expect a school to allow teachers if they were bringing in coaching, for example? So would would you ever have universal, consistent coaching across the school, or would it always be opt-in, opt-out autonomy?
Well, I would say the way to handle it is that across the school, you would have an expectation of professional growth. So everybody should be doing some kind of learning, and it should be equally rigorous. It can't be, you have a choice of working with a coach or going to a conference in Bangkok. I mean, you've got to have equally rigorous kinds of professional development. But if a teacher says, what I want to do is I really want to get good at formative assessment, I'm going to read Dylan Williams' work, I'm going to start gathering data, I'll be able to show you what I'm doing, I really want formative assessment to be a part of what I do every day when I teach, I'm going to immerse myself in it. I don't need a coach for that. I'd rather do it on my own. I wouldn't say to the teacher, you have to have a coach. But I do think everybody has to be engaged in something. If you say you could have a coach or you could do nothing seems pretty attractive. So I think that's how I would do it.
Right. Just to jump on, because you mentioned Dylan Williams, he talks a fair bit about rather than looking at teacher quality, which is difficult to capture, he talks about teaching quality. And the idea that he calls it love the one you're with strategy. I've heard him say it enough times that it's stuck in my brain. From a leadership perspective, though, if you're doing the love the ones you're with strategy, and say in Australia where you have incredibly high turnover, like most teachers in their first 5 years leave the profession, about half of them, is there some level where as a leader you might kind of hold back on how willing you might be to coach a certain group of teachers, or is there some level of kind of proof that you have to get that they might engage with it, or how would you approach that as a leader?
Well, I would think that coaching should increase the efficacy of the teacher. But I think the coach has to read the teacher's situation, and in working in partnership with the teacher, identify what would be most helpful. And I'm inclined to think that it may be in the first year that the teacher just needs to feel like they belong. And a lot of the time is going to be on helping the teacher feel, they're surrounded by people who are succeeding, and it's going to be helpful just for them to say, look, you're not, you're going to get there, and here are the things you're going to do, and sort of deal a lot with the affective dimensions of the person's work rather than the specific activities. So I don't know what the level you're with actually means. So I haven't heard that, but I think, but I would say, I think coaching, whether you're a first-year teacher or a 31st year, I think it should increase efficacy, not decrease it. It should make you feel, because you see yourself succeeding after you set a goal. It should make you feel like it should make it clear you're making a difference.
Yeah, right. Okay. And maybe for the younger teachers, what they're receiving is more of an explicit mentoring, which is very much not what coaching is, I guess.
Well, I wouldn't be directive, really. I mean, if a teacher says to me, look, I'm desperate, tell me what to do. But I mean, if you start off telling the teacher what to do, then you create dependence. And then their expectation a little down the road is, I'm going to be told how to do this. I'm not going to solve the problem myself. And so I'd be inclined to wanting the teacher to follow the same process, whether they're a first year or a much more experienced teacher. But there could be, because it's dialogical, it may be more important for the coach to share things in a dialogical way and say, well, let me share a few options for you. Which one do you think would be the best one? But I still would want the teacher to be making the decisions about what happens. Remember, you have a goal. So the goal is your objective standard of excellence. You know what you're trying to do, and you're just trying different things out to see if you can hit the goal.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it takes me back to last year working with a first-year teacher, and I was very clear that I wasn't going to solve the problem, but that we could discuss it and sort of tease it out, and sort of trying to tap into the sort of theory of change or theory of sort of how things work to get them to realize more clearly what it is that they wanted and how to achieve the goal that they'd set for themselves. Does that sound vaguely like something that might be coaching?
Maybe I would put it this way. in the literature on hope, they identify three elements. Rick Snyder is a person who did this pioneering research right here in Kansas, and Shane Lopez wrote about it, and they say that hope involves a place you're trying to get to, and pathways to that goal, and then agency, a belief that you can do it. And I think what coaches do is they give people hope because they help them get clear on the goal they want, and it's the goal they want, and then they help them identify pathways to the goal, and they help them hit the goal. And as the person starts to move closer and closer to the goal, and they see that their actions that they're doing are making a difference, they start to develop that agency, the belief that they can do it. So to me, that's the way I would put it, is so that means the coach knows what effective practices are, and the coach will, in some cases, share those practices, help the teacher figure out how to do it. And what they're doing is they're giving them a pathway to the goal. They're building hope.
Mm. And that seems like the next question leads pretty well. In the current situation, what role do you see for, firstly, coaching, and secondly, I guess, hope through coaching, considering the climate we're in at the moment?
Well, I think right now, I think everything's off. Like, I think whatever you're doing is good enough. I think there's just so much people have to deal with right now. Raising their kids at home during the day and trying to work, and maybe their partner has lost their job, and there's just so much going on that whatever it takes to just get through is okay. I don't think anybody should be worried about, how am I doing on my rubric for effective work. So I think that, but I can tell you, we've been surveying coaches and asking them what they're doing, and very few of them are doing coaching cycles. What they're doing is they're helping with curriculum, helping people plan their new stuff. They're doing a lot of technology work. They're just being available sort of for support. But of the people we've surveyed so far, and the survey is still going on, so this is kind of preliminary, but it's like 4% of their time is spent on a coaching cycle. Right. So, okay. So I think that right now, I don't think anybody should. I think we're just helping people get through this really new time. Somebody I saw on Twitter said, right now we're all first-year teachers, and I think that's kind of it. We are all in this difficult place, and what we need now is just to sort of, help each other huddle through this process.
Beautiful. All right, Jim, thank you very much for your time.
A pleasure. I hope we get to meet some next time I'm in Australia, and I'll see you somewhere. And enjoy your beautiful city, one of the best in the world. I think it's a lovely place.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you very much.
Take care. Bye-bye. Thanks.